back to another episode of the Yellowhammer Sports Podcast. I'm your host, CJ Duncan. Thank you all for joining us. I know we took a brief intermission. We apologize for that, but as you all may know, the holidays get pretty busy. But we're happy to be back here with you all. I know a lot of y'all are getting geared up for bowl season and the college football playoff. But before we dive completely into that realm of SEC sports right now, we want to take some time with a guy who played at Alabama, a former Alabama guard, Lawson Schaffer. Lawson hopefully can give us some insight on all things college basketball. We've had several games happen so far. It's kind of hard to keep up with basketball and football at the same time, but we are thrilled to have Lawson with us. Thank you for being on, man. Thank you for your time.
Man, I appreciate it. It's to me, I always tell people this is the best time of the year. You got, the best rivalries in football happening, and then you got the Thanksgiving feast week of basketball. I mean, is there anything better than this time of year? Maybe March Madness for me is
Yeah.
up there, but honestly, I love football, love basketball. So to me, there's not a better time.
No, it's been great. I agree completely with you. You know, I've been so locked in with football all fall, but then I'm in DC for a work trip, sitting in my hotel bed, and then I turn on the TV and there's Auburn versus Duke, and then Alabama and North Carolina back to back. I'm like, I mean, it doesn't get better than this. I got to
It's
call room
prime
service,
time too.
man.
Yeah, it's prime time. If you'd have told me 10 years ago that Auburn, Duke, Alabama, North Carolina would be prime time SEC ACC challenge, I told you were a lunatic. So
Yeah.
this is we might be in the golden ages, but
Man,
it's
it
awesome
is
to see.
incredible, incredible. Well, like I said, thank you for your time. What's been going on with you? Have you been keeping up with this crazy football season? Before we get into basketball, you been keeping up with football at all this year?
I have been. It's been an up and down year. I think even if you're an Auburn fan or really any fan of the SEC, there's no team that's just clear dominant like we've seen in the past. My initial thoughts on NIL when they came out and said, "Hey, we're gonna be able to start paying guys," was, well, the big dogs are just gonna feast off this. It's gonna create a lot of top heaviness, but I think there's more parity than we've ever seen in college football, which makes it really fun. Which I hate that Alabama's just getting knocked off the throne, getting hit with
Yeah,
daggers, but it
yeah,
does make it a little
exactly.
more fun to watch
Yeah,
in certain
it does.
instances.
I think you're exactly right with about the NIL situation. I think that was everybody's kind of first thought was, all right, whoever has the most money is going to end up having the best teams. And in a way, you still kind of see that with Texas and Ohio State. But some of these teams are able to round up just enough money to where these hometown kids can still play at home. And so you've got these smaller schools like SMU where Dallas is such a big pull for athletes,
That's
and
right.
those guys are willing to stay home because there's a lot of money in the city of Dallas, Fort Worth. So it's interesting how it's all turned out. What do you think about the Tide missing the playoffs? I know that's been a lot of controversy lately. That's your team. Do you think they should have snuck in, or do you think this is better for the program to kind of take a
think you
year
gotta.
off?
I think you can't say we deserve to be in. You lose three games. Unfortunately, a pretty bad loss at Oklahoma towards the end of the year. I just think you're a little delusional if you say you deserve to be in after dropping three. I think, I've seen the strength of schedule stuff, but I wish there was a better format in a sense of like college basketball. It's sometimes not about how many games you win, it's about the games you do win.
Mhm.
Um, and vice versa. I mean, if you have bad losses, which we did have, you don't really get a leg to stand on in that argument sometimes. So it goes both ways. I don't think it'll ever be a perfect world. I mean, there's 64 teams that get in the NCAA tournament, and there's always a few teams that say, well, we should have got in.
Right, right.
So whether it's 12, 64, there's always going to be that, well, this team should have got in. And I think the conversation is fun. I think it creates excitement.
Mhm.
And honestly, like to me, SMU, they played great all year long, and they played
Mhm.
Clemson right down to the wire. So again, I don't know how you would keep them out
Yeah,
and put
yeah.
us in. So
No, I think you're right on point with that. I think, there was an argument, for Alabama. There was an argument for Ole Miss. I know South Carolina folks have been kicking and screaming a bit, but it's hard when, Ole Miss is right there next to you and they beat you at home. But,
Exactly.
I could see the argument, but like you said, with three losses, I understand it's the SEC and I'm a homer more than anybody. I think it should just be, the five best SEC teams and then
Yeah.
everybody else. But anyways, next year, I think it's going to be really good going into next year, this offseason. DeBoer having a full offseason, getting his system in there, and really kind of testing the guy and see who really wants to be there.
That's
I
right.
guarantee you it's going to be a very, very tough offseason for those guys. Just working on discipline, working on the culture there. So, Coleman, Alabama.
Uh-huh.
I was doing some research on you, and I just started seeing some crazy, crazy high school stats, man. I mean, I, I mean, what does it mean to have had so much success and to kind of to do that for your hometown in a sense, right? You're the face of the hometown for a while there, and what did it take to get to that point?
Well, honestly, to me, I moved back to Coleman after I graduated from Alabama. To me, Coleman's everything. To me, we have some of the best people. It's the best town. They really, even when I got to Alabama, if it wasn't for a lot of people here and the support that I got from them, whether Auburn, Alabama fans, it would have been really hard to stay on track. But just growing up, I think every kid dreams of just, trying to achieve, break records at your school. So that's really what I set my eyes on. And again, I was fortunate with a really good coach, really good teammates. I got some AAU teammates transfer over to Coleman. So again, anytime you have personal success, it's never really just you; it's the people around you. So it was fun years though because we got in this philosophy of like fast 32. So we had no big guys. Like I led us in rebounding, which is not a good sign. Uh, so we broke the state record for most threes attempted, made, points average. I mean, it was across the board. We were just
Yeah.
as quick as you could get up the floor, you pretty much took a shot. So it made it really fun.
Yeah, so Lawson was Player of the Year, All State. Remember the Alabama Mississippi game as well. I mean, your senior year, you were kind of like in a float state. Some people call it like the zone, like over 700 points in one season. That would eventually give you the scoring record at Coleman. What's it feel like in that moment, or when you're in that state where it's just like the goal is this big, you just can't miss.
And that's what was wild. And I never really realized, at the end of the year, you looked up and you're up for these nominations, Player of the Year, and the guy going with me to Alabama was Brandon Austin. It was me and him for 6A Player of the Year. And I was fortunate enough to win it over him. And, I was a preferred walk on and he was a scholarship guy.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting. But again, I mean, you don't realize sometimes how good things are going because you're just in the zone. You look up and you're like, wow, that was a really good year, a really fun year. But basketball to me is it's kind of been my lifeline. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
made it a lot better too.
No, that's great. Lawson, I don't know if you know this, but we have something in common when it comes to
What's that?
basketball. I was not the basketball player you were, I'm sure, but I actually was two-time All-State as well and a
My
member of
man.
the Alabama Mississippi game back in 2013.
Really?
Yeah, but I stayed at about 5'11" though, man. My athleticism was more of my scoring than anything. So
You're talking to the right guy at 5'10", no jumping ability whatsoever. So I relate.
yeah, man. So that's great though. I was looking it up online and I said, man, this dude was a hooper, hooper.
So
So
who
um
played with you in the Alabama, Mississippi? I'm trying to think of some Alabama guys from 2013.
De'Runnya Wilson, he ended up playing
Yeah,
football at Mississippi State.
he was a big.
It's
Remember
just
that Winona team was
Yep, sure
unreal.
was. Yeah, Jeremy Johnson, guys like that were
Yeah,
on that team, and so we had a good time. We really did. So what got you to Alabama? I mean, I know you're a Coleman guy. Did you grow up a Tide fan, or was this a childhood dream to play for Alabama? What
no,
got you
dude.
there?
So my wife got me there. I grew up a big Auburn guy. my dad. I mean, we went to the championship with Cam Newton and that team. So
Against Oregon.
we're pretty big. I mean, you don't go to that game all the way out in Arizona unless you're a pretty big
Yeah.
Auburn fan. So we went to that. But my wife had told me, she was like, I'm not going to Auburn, and I'm not really going anywhere but Alabama. So I guess I'm going to Alabama too then. And I really wasn't sure. So Grant had just gotten fired my senior year at the end of it. And I thought, no way a new coach would come in and know who I am or even have the same opportunity that was on the table. But Petway and I had a really good relationship, and he was retained on staff. So I think he had put it in, Johnson's ear that I was open to walking on and stuff. So Coach Johnson called me about a week, 2 weeks after being hired. And the rest is history. He everything that I remember seeing about him on TV, it was that phone call reminded me. I mean, it was ideal. It was loud,
Yeah.
a lot of personality, and I
Yeah.
was like, man, this guy is awesome. This is great.
Wow. So how does dad feel? How did dad feel about you switching sides like that? In
Dad
this,
was
it's
fine
hard to
with it.
switch sides and go back.
He's honestly now, I mean, he cares about Auburn football, but he considers himself an Alabama basketball fan.
Okay.
He's again, the good thing is I used to always joke with people like, man, your dad, he training and stuff like my dad to this day doesn't know what a travel is. Like I'd have to get on to him after the games because he's screaming at the refs about the
Yeah.
wrong thing.
About the
Like
wrong.
he'd be like, that's a double dribble. I'm like, Dad, it's a travel.
Yeah.
Like he has no clue what basketball really is. So it kind of helped in that sense, but I think he'd have probably been a little indifferent if I would have walked on and played football or something like that. So
Okay. All
you know
right.
what I mean?
That makes sense. That makes sense. So,
Yeah.
like you just said, it's kind of the 2015-16 time period, and Coach Johnson, Avery Johnson is coming in to coach the Alabama Crimson Tide, and it's your first time playing college basketball as well. So y'all are kind of jumping in this together. It feels like. How was it playing for Coach Johnson?
It
This
was
guy who's kind of accomplished everything when it comes to basketball. He's won NBA championships and been an All-Pro, all these things. What was
it
that
was
like?
great. It was great. I think I never like to speak for other people, but I think a lot of the people would agree, and probably Coach Johnson, some of the staff. When you're new to that world, I think it's a lot harder than what it looks like. And we kind of talked about that earlier
Mhm.
before we hopped on. That you step into that realm of college sports, even from an NBA background and how much success he had, it's two different worlds. You're dealing with 18 and 19-year-old kids that we thought we knew a lot and we're mature. Not mature. I knew I wasn't mature, but we think we know a lot. You know what I'm saying? And there's
Yeah.
a lot of structure and culture building that goes into it, and it takes time. You get in something new, you have a lot of new faces, but I will say we were fortunate all 4 of my years that I played with some really good dudes. We had really good assistant coaches, and Coach Johnson, again, everything that I thought about him on TV and his big personality. I mean, he checked all those boxes. So it was a lot of fun.
Do you have any, in hindsight, do you have any good stories that will kind of illustrate that personality of his for our audience?
Yeah. So he's one of those guys. So his background, he was a walk on. He gets a scholarship at Southern. He's just one of those guys that really loves to compete. And with competing for him is just he wants to beat your tail.
Yeah.
And he'd always challenge me to one on one at the end of practice, like in front of the guys. He'd be like, if Lawson can beat me in one on one or score on me, you guys don't have to do this or this. And he would beat me almost every time. I mean,
Oh my
I was,
goodness.
I mean, it'd be a mid range jumper, or he'd back me down the post and hit a hook shot, and that like one of those like a Olajuwon kind of like running hooks.
Right.
And then defense, it was a nightmare
Yeah.
because he would just really. And he's still strong,
Yeah.
but that kind of summed up who he was, and he would always just be like, he'd call me out like, if Austin does this, we don't have to run. I'm like, why do you put this pressure on me? And of course, you know how it is when you're around the guys.
Hmm.
They're gonna be pissed off because you just made them run, and
Yeah.
then two, they're gonna give you Hades when you get in the locker
When you
room
get
about
back to that locker room, it's
getting your
over.
tail busted by the coach is never a good look. Who's 55 years old?
And they're not gonna let it go. You'll hear about it the
Oh,
rest
it's
of the season.
relentless. relentless. So yeah, it was that's a to me a story of kind of who he was. Ultimate competitor though. I mean, I could tell when we'd be losing a game or something, he would just want to be out there so bad. Like
Yeah.
if he could put on a jersey, he would in a heartbeat kind of
He's
situation.
probably
So
like diving after a loose ball over there on the
he
sidelines, you know?
he would do it, no doubt.
Oh my goodness. So over the last several years, we've seen a bit of a resurgence in Alabama basketball, to the point
Hmm.
where the attraction and the excitement of the program is kind of rivaling the football team. I know there's a difference, but when you get game day to come to Tuscaloosa and it's not for football, that's a big deal. How was it for you, playing for a so-called football school? I
Yeah,
feel like Auburn's kind of going through that same transition as well right now between basketball and football.
I think it's a huge plus and a huge benefit. One, you have some of the best athletes. You got guys that are about to go play in the NFL for many years and have a lot of success. And you're surrounding them all the time, study hall and stuff like that. And again, very fortunate during my time at Alabama. Some of those football guys were the nicest dudes ever, and they had no business even ever showing any care towards me. There's no way I could ever help them with anything. So I always appreciated that. Like Marlon, some of those guys, I mean, just super, super nice and awesome stand up dudes. But I think as a school, we benefited from it. The revenue share that the football team brought in always helped with some of the basketball stuff and other sports. Again, Alabama's a national, if not worldwide brand because of the football. Anybody that says different, I would say just envies the attention that the football team might have got, but all that was well deserved. So I do think it's cool to see that basketball is getting some of that attention now. We briefly got it with Collin and Herb Jones in that recruiting class.
Right.
And I'll never forget when Trey Young in Oklahoma came to
Hmm.
Tacoma Coliseum to play us. That game was unreal. It felt like every dream I'd had, basketball on TV. That's what the game felt like. You
Yeah.
had Bill Raftery calling it. I mean, it was just so cool. So again, stuff like that was just surreal. But I do think Oates had said this too when he first got the job. Like we, as a school, as a program, benefit because of the football team.
Mhm. Well, it's funny you bring up Collin Sexton. I'm sitting here when you say his name, I'm kind of thinking about how he plays basketball. It's kind of what you described of Avery Johnson, just somebody that's
Hundred
just
percent.
gritty, plays super hard, competes very hard. I mean, is that kind of what you got from Collin, while you were with him?
Oh yeah, I he he's probably the best competitor I've ever been around. He got hurt and he was doing some prehab stuff and they wanted me to play one on one and just like I guess get some like game time stuff, get his legs underneath him. And I'll never forget he about ripped his jersey in half. And I was like, man, this guy cares.
He wants it, man. He
He
wants it.
wants it. I mean, it was just one of those things. Like he was awesome. One of the best teammates. I love playing with him, but he was also one of those guys who's like, it was win or die.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, he's a guy still to this day. I mean, he could go for 30 in the league and, to hit 30 points in an NBA game, you've got to be one
Unreal.
of those guys. You got to be a
Exactly.
dog. And that's how I would describe Colin Sexton. He's not the biggest guy in the world, probably not the fastest, shoots the best, none of those. He's just a
Yeah,
dog. He's going to get
he
the,
is.
the ball in the bucket at some point.
And no one worked harder than him. Like
Yeah.
every day, morning, afternoon, you didn't find him out and about. It was the gym or sleep. And again, you see the success. And I did a podcast recently and I talked about the same thing. Like watching those guys get drafted is such a good feeling because you see all that hard work come full circle and they're so deserving of that. And, they're going to take care of their families and themselves. And it's a really cool because you got to spend time with them. You see how good they are and down to earth and, to see their dreams come true. It's really cool.
Well, and you were also, speaking of those guys getting drafted and playing in the league. You were also there with Herbert Jones,
Hmm.
who's absolutely killing it in the NBA right now. I mean, during his short time in the NBA, he's made an all rookie team and first team all defense. Was it like to see his success I know you spoke about draft night, but I mean, it didn't stop there for him. And in basketball, I always say it's a little bit harder than football in a sense, as far as success is concerned, because there's just so many limited spots on a team, right? I don't know, there's
Absolutely.
15 or so guys on a team, but probably only like 12 dress out and only like eight play. But
Exactly.
this guy, not only found a niche with the Pelicans, but he also is showing it league wide that, hey, I'm the best defensive player in the league.
He's one of those guys that I think will have a career that's probably 15 to 20 years deep, and it will be a solid career. Again, he's already won some pretty crazy accolades, but he'll be one of those guys where no matter what team it is, every team needs a Herbert Jones.
Yes.
So his value, it's hard to place a limit. You know what I mean? It's just
Oh,
he's
yeah.
just one of those guys where like one, he's a culture guy. You never
Mhm.
have to worry about him, an attitude or something like that. He'll fit in with just any team. And whatever you ask him to do, I promise you, he will do it and do it
Yeah.
to the best of his ability. I mean, he takes charges. He's
Mhm.
his wingspan is what's freaky. Like
Yeah.
I'll never forget, you'd have a crossover and you think he's by you, and next thing you know, the ball's behind you and he's gone. You're like, how in the hell
How
did he
did he
even
get
tip
to
that?
that?
And you
Yeah.
know how it is when you think you're past somebody and then it gets picked.
Uh-huh.
There's
Oh,
not a
that's the
worse
worst
feeling.
feeling.
It's gone. I mean,
It's one of the more embarrassing feelings like you can have is I rather, to be honest with you, I would rather get dunked on
hundred
than to
percent,
get the ball ripped from me like at half court. I would
a
much
hundred
rather that
percent.
happen.
Because then you run, the guy dunks it, and you're just picking the ball up underneath. You know the coach is
Yeah,
just
it's
irate. I mean, it's
yeah.
2 points gone.
And it's like if a guy dunks it, he dunks it. Like, I mean, I mean, okay, whatever.
Next play. But
I'm,
you're
I'm competing. At least I went for the block. You know what I mean?
exactly or charged, but like, when you get ripped, morale's down, confidence is over, and the guy's going to pick you at full court again. You're like, God, please just let me get this past
Just
half
let me
court
get it. Let me
passing.
cross half court, please. And then when that happens, now you're backing them down from like full court, and you look silly, man. It's like this guy's our point guard. He's backing the guy
He
down
can't
so he doesn't get
dribble.
ripped again.
It's bad. I'll know. I mean, seriously, I have story of story after that from what Herb would do to me. Like scout team and stuff. If Herb, like for instance, when we were Oklahoma scout, I got to be Trey Young, so I had to dribble a lot and stuff. But they had Herb as primary defender on Trey Young. I was like, this is gonna be the worst day of my life. Like, so I was like, just get ready to get embarrassed for about 40 minutes.
Oh
And
man.
he embarrassed me, and thankfully he replicated that with Trey Young, so I didn't feel
Yeah.
as bad.
Yeah.
But he's that good, and again, he will have a very long, successful career. He'll make a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
So,
He is on his way. I know a lot of folks thought about putting him up for defensive player of the year.
and he should be
At
like,
one point.
if you watch, obviously some of the stats for defense player of the year are unique because I think a lot of people look like blocking shots, stuff like that.
Mhm.
But if you actually probably track the percentages of what dudes do on him compared to other guys when he's guarding them, it would
Mhm.
blow. To me, that's what you got to look at. Like,
Yeah.
and he's not guarding their third option. He's
Mhm.
normally guarding the first option on every team every
On every
night.
team, every
And
night too, which is a toll on your body as well.
and it's just to be able to do that night in, night out. It's so impressive.
Yeah, no, I agree. So while you were at Alabama, y'all were able to make the NCAA tournament at one point. What was kind of that experience leading up to the craziness of March Madness? And the SEC tournament kind of falls right before that, right? So you
Yeah, yeah.
played for like 2 or 3 weeks straight. You're just basketball, basketball, basketball. How was that?
It was cool. So I don't know if you know the story, but the only reason why we got in the tournament that year, we were a bubble team. A&M, we played in first round of the SEC tournament, and I think they're a bubble team as well because we were both, I think, 8 and 9 seed in the SEC that year. But backs against the wall, we call this play with like, I think Collin goes full court. Obviously, we don't run the play at all, and Collin does a shot I've never seen him do, which is a wrong foot, or I say wrong foot, off this not the correct foot floater, full speed, underhanded,
I remember that. I remember
and just
that.
an absolute teardrop over what is the guy's name? He was A&M center. We played with the Celtics. Number 44. He's with the Trailblazers now. Robert.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. It's not Williams, is it? Robert Williams?
Robert Williams does
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
teardrop floater over Robert Williams, and it is not. I mean, just chicken. I mean, doesn't hit the rim or anything. I was like, didn't run the play at all. If we don't make the shot, we're definitely not in the tournament.
Yeah.
It was unreal. Then we go and beat Auburn, and so that kind of solidified us getting in the tournament. But and then you go play in the NCAA, and it is so cool. I mean, just
Yeah.
how they have it set up and stuff,
Mhm.
and get to the hotel, and the names on everything. It was really really cool. And then, unfortunately, we get the draw of Virginia Tech, which wasn't bad. They were a good team. We were probably playing our best ball at this point. We beat them, I think, by like 7-8. It was a pretty close game. We kind of pulled away at the end. But then we played Villanova, who ends up
Mhm.
winning the championship that year.
Yeah.
All starting five, and I think the sixth man for them all end up going to the NBA.
Is that like the DiVincenzo and
Yeah, Jalen Brunson,
Brunson and all those guys?
just nasty.
Oh,
I'll
goodness.
never forget this. This is how
Y'all just ran
stupid I
into a
was.
buzzsaw, you
Oh,
know?
absolutely. So we get in the locker room, and DiCenzio is the only guy that's really scoring for him at this point. And he probably had like 10 or 13, which is good for a first half. And the last three he made was like a crazy, nasty step back in the half.
Yeah.
So we're down 7, and I get in the locker room, and I'm trying to talk to the guys. I'm like, that there's no way that guy does that again. We got them on the ropes. They're only up 7. We can play much better. They can't play much better. Oh my God.
They play better.
Way better. Michael Bridges got hot. Brunson started hitting stuff in the post.
Yeah.
I tried to Spielman or something like that, or Spillman started hitting catch and pop threes. I think it got like a 25-point game with like 12 minutes to go. Like it's like we
Oh,
blinked and the coach had already called like 3 timeouts trying to stop the runs.
he was trying to slow it down. He was
Slow it
trying to,
down. It was like a fire hydrant had been opened up. It was just raining on our heads. And I was like, damn, like
yeah.
that's all right. They can play a lot better. That
Yeah.
was it.
That was an impressive team, though. That was a really impressive team. And really, when Jay Wright was at Villanova, I mean, the years that he was there, they were truly a powerhouse, blue blood. I mean, they had a chance to. They went into every season saying we have a chance to win it all.
And here's the thing with that team, talent was unreal. But any J Wright team is going to have discipline and be coached really well. So to have both those,
Hmm.
holy smokes! I mean, it's a scary team.
Yeah, yeah. I hate that, but yeah, that was a true buzzsaw right there. They were on a mission that was much
Yeah.
different than kind of sneaking into the tournament. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
we couldn't. I don't even think on our best day, and I think probably most of the guys would agree. I think on our best day and their worst day, we'd sneak them.
yeah.
But it'd have to be the perfect storm for us to get that way. Like, it'd have to be some really good fortune.
Oh man. Well, now, the team, Coach Oates is now the head coach of Alabama, and they went on an absolute magical run last year, all the way to the Final Four. I know as an alumni, you are thrilled about what's going on. What do you see with Coach Oates and the direction of this program now? Do you think
Man,
this was, and I know you don't believe this was a fluke, but kind of share with our audience why you think there will be continued success in the future.
yeah. So I've touched on this in the past, but when Coach Oates came in, they had a limited number of guys, and they needed 2 or 3 practice guys. So Riley Norris and I practiced for a good bit, really leading up to us graduating. But the system he's able to put in and philosophy is just unreal. I was blown away, and I thought, man, if this guy can get the right guys in here and recruit well, the sky's the limit because you practicing with them for just about an hour a day, I was blown away. How smart.
Mhm.
Um, their practice style is unreal. They still do it to this
Yeah.
day. It's some of the best stuff I've ever seen. And um, I really think his and I really think Coach Johnson opened up the ability to say, hey, we can recruit on a national scale. So we
Mhm.
were able to go get Collin Sexton. We recruited a top, I believe it was a top 5, top 10 class that year.
Mhm.
So it's like, hey, we can do this. How do we do it consistently though? And I think Oates has really tapped into both with his style of play and his philosophy on top of the recruiting. And I think our NIL budget's really good. I think we're a sleeping giant, and now we're kind of being put on this national scale. Like, hey, these guys are for real. They're here to stay. And again, I urge everybody to continue to try to donate as much as you can to NIL funds that we have set up, the Alabamas, because it makes a big difference. If you want to separate yourself in today's modern age, you got to have funding.
Yeah, yeah, you got to
You
have it.
got to.
That's the name of the game. That's how you have success over a long time period at this point, especially now that the floodgates are open, everybody's doing it. So if you don't, you'll probably get left behind in one way or another. It looks like this year's team is primed for another run. I mean, they are
Yeah,
7-2 right now. Just had a big win against North Carolina not too long ago. From the outside looking in, I can kind of feel kind of what happened last year kind of transpiring again because, and I didn't play at the college level in basketball, but it just feels like when it comes to the NCAA tournament, you kind of need those older guys on the team, right?
a
A
hundred percent.
lot of these teams have these one and none guys, these freshmen that look great, get a lot of notoriety and publicity at the beginning of the year, but as the year progresses and you get into the tournament, it's the teams that have the juniors and the seniors
Yeah,
that actually end up going the furthest, similar to those Villanova teams you're talking about,
a
right?
100%.
And Alabama seems to have a good mixture of young and old. So
I
why not
know.
do it again this year?
I can easily see it. Again, we have the balance. One thing I was telling somebody the other day is like you want to have one or two good freshmen. Don't get me wrong, but you would much rather have a team filled with seniors and juniors that hey have the experience, good enough. But when it comes tournament time, that experience really really matters. Because teams are going to make runs, always do in every game. But having those seniors and a lot of them know how important each shot is in the tournament. I feel
Mhm.
like sometimes freshmen get lost in like, well, I'm playing good, I'm going on to better things. Well, those seniors, this is everything to them. And
Mhm.
each possession really matters. And I think you saw that with last year's team. This year's team is missing a little bit of that early on, I feel like. Watching them play, sometimes I feel like there's not this huge sense of urgency. Like
Mhm.
we get out the slow starts and I feel like we're clawing our way back into games, or there might be games where we're ahead just based off talent and they're not separating themselves because there's not that sense of urgency. So I think as the year goes on, I think a lot of that will change. It did last year. But again, the only thing I really wish is Auburn went so darn good because I'm
Yeah.
tired of seeing them win every game and be top ranked. I wish the spotlight was just on us, but we're sharing the spotlight with a lot of other SEC teams this year.
Yeah, well, and I think that's what's so impressive is that the SEC is not just a football conference anymore. I mean, the
No,
basketball's legit in the SEC. Baseball is legit in the SEC. Just sticking with basketball, you got Alabama, you got Auburn, Tennessee's the number one team in the country.
mm-hmm.
Calipari's at Arkansas now. Kentucky's always going to be good. Florida, Texas, Oklahoma. I mean, the
Yeah,
list goes on.
it's crazy.
It's tough to win in this conference.
100%. And somebody was talking about the other day on Twitter, like this might be the best the SEC's ever been at basketball in general. I mean, you look at the ACC SEC challenge. I think we went 14-2, and one of those losses was Kentucky on a game winner to Clemson or a close loss to Clemson. I mean, that's it. And Kentucky's I think fifth or sixth nationally, maybe
Mhm.
even higher than that. So it's you got 4 or 5 teams top 10. You got Tennessee, Auburn, Alabama, Kentucky, and Florida. That is
Mhm.
unheard of.
Yes.
That is unheard of.
It is.
And there's other teams right outside knocking on the door. Oklahoma, who's supposed to be last in the conference, I think is like 18th right now in the country.
Yeah.
So it is a scary, scary league.
Yeah. It is wild how much that's changed just in our lifetime, how quickly
It's
things have
nuts.
shifted. So give me a basketball moment in your life that you watched or you experienced that made you kind of fall in love with the game. I heard you earlier kind of saying that, hey, my dad's not the biggest basketball guy. He's just a
Hmm.
Auburn football guy. So what made you drawn to basketball and want you to pursue that even at the college level?
I really don't know. I don't know if there was ever a moment where I was like, man, I just remember playing in the neighborhood as kids, like either if you weren't good, you didn't get to play really. And I was
Mhm.
always the youngest kid and the smallest. And we had some pretty good athletes in our neighborhood. I mean, you had Keegan Thompson who pitches for the Cubs. You had Ben Moore who plays baseball, played baseball at Alabama, played a little bit in the major leagues, but just had some really, really good athletes. So I, I mean, the neighbors always say like you shot the ball all the time, but like I don't recall doing all that. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I remember in ninth grade, I got a letter from UAH, which I know a lot of people should be familiar with. It's a small Division II school that's really good basketball at Huntsville. And I remember being like, okay, this is serious now, right? Like, there's other people that are noticing. This is my ticket to college because I'm not the brightest. So it's like I got to leverage this as much as I can. And so I got that letter, and I really started taking it serious after then. And thank God I did because again, I don't think I would have made it to college without it.
Well, I couldn't tell, but I tell you what, and it brought you so many memories, right? That
Yes,
sport has kind of taken you all over the world, being from Coleman and then I'm sure traveling all those different places with Alabama basketball. Those are some experiences you probably would have never had if it wasn't for that round ball.
no chance. I mean, it gave me the job I have now, the career, the stories I have, the people I've gotten to meet. Um, Again, I feel like without it, wouldn't even have a, an eighth of the life I've been fortunate enough to live. So very thankful for it.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite memory that you were involved with, whether that was at Alabama? Was there a particular game or was there a high school game where you hit 45 points or something crazy like that? What was your favorite memory, just being a ball player, being a
I only
Hooper?
had one 40-point game, and it was a good one. It was right at Thanksgiving, so that was fun. But I would say my favorite would probably be the pass against Villanova, even though we were down a good bit. It was one of those where I got to go back. Reggie Miller's calling the game,
Hmm.
um, and just the magnitude of the NCAA tournament, and so the crowd. So looking at me, obviously do not look like a basketball player one, but don't look like a much of anything anyway. And the crowds were coming in for the next game coming up, and I think even the Villanova people were cheering for me at this point.
Hmm.
So when the pass happened, it was like I hit a game winner. Like the whole crowd, and I remember CBS panning out. You could just see everybody standing up and stuff, and like
Yeah.
it was just such a surreal moment because it's something as a kid. I'm sure with football for you, like there's certain games you dream about or moments, and
Hmm.
obviously with basketball, there's nothing. The NCAA tournament's the mecca. So being able to do that in an NCAA tournament game was just really, really cool. And then thank God Daniel Giddens caught it and dunked it, and
Yeah.
it was such a bang bang. It looked good and stuff. So
Yeah.
I'll never forget. I was like, I cannot wait to go check my phone
I
after this game.
gotta, I got see all the text messages. Go to YouTube later tonight. See what that looks
It
like. Yeah.
was hilarious. I had people just like, man, I hate the season's over, but that pass was cool
But
though.
that pass though. Oh man, that is awesome. I mean, we all have those moments. I know exactly how you feel. I remember my first touchdown or playing at Auburn for the first time. My mother was a Auburn grad and I grew up going to all the games, and so just rolling the Jordan hair. I mean, just
It's just a
chills.
feeling of it, right? Yeah.
Oh man, doesn't it? You can't replicate that moment. So I totally get it. Well, Lawson, tell our audience what you're doing now and how they can keep up with you.
Yeah, so right now, like I said, back home in Coleman, work for a company called Buyers Right. We're a partner of Higginbotham out of Fort Worth, Texas. I work as a commercial insurance broker. So we work with businesses, helping them on risk management through insurance policies. So it's been a huge learning curve,
Yeah.
but it has been an awesome experience. I work with some great people. I get to work with a lot of people here in Coleman, across the state, and we're in several other, really nationwide. So it's been really cool just dealing with it. I had a guy actually just send me a nameplate from Aiken, South Carolina, um, working with them on some things, but it just shows you the Alabama brand is strong. We've got talking on LinkedIn. And it's just, again, that's why I'm so grateful for my time at Alabama, because without it, there's no way I'd have the connections and people that are in my life without it. So
Well, that's awesome. And I know so many people are going to enjoy all the stories you brought us today and to hear your story and about your time there at Alabama. Well, we appreciate your time here on Yellowhammer. Just know that you can come back at any point. Matter of fact, I may call on you once we really dive into the basketball and you'll be our
do it.
expert analyst here on Yellowhammer, if that's okay with you.
You got my word. You call me anytime. I'll hop on here. We'll just talk basketball. It doesn't have to be Alabama. We can just talk SEC basketball as a whole. Definitely as it gets deep dive into SEC play.
Okay, great. Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate it. We will definitely be in touch. For our audience, you can always catch us on all social platforms. We've got YouTube, we've got X, we've got even on our website, yellowhammernews.com. You can also find us. So please tune in. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, CJ. I appreciate the time, man.
Thanks, Lawson. Uh-huh.